And then we got in a giant fight at 10:15 p.m. and went to bed extremely angry at each other. That do not recommend.
And I don't need you to emotionally affirm me and let me know that in your eyes, I'm just the same woman I've always been, whatever.
So I would not be comfortable saying to my husband, you make all the summer plans, because then I would show up at the summer plans and say, these are terrible summer plans, and now I am mad at you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to What Fresh Hell Laughing in the Face of Motherhood. This is Margaret.
And this is Amy. This week, we're going to talk about weekly meetings. Do you have them?
Meetings.
Why you have them? Team meetings, by which I realized as I was doing the research for this episode, there's the just with your spouse ones, your parenting partner, and then there's the whole family meeting. So I guess we can talk about both either. Do you do both? Do you have like a one-on-one meeting and a family meeting?
I mean, do I, Amy? I claim to. My husband and I desperately need a couples meeting. We generally have a family meeting on Sunday mornings. It's family meeting time. And it's funny because I have one child who completely resists and resents do we have to do family meeting today? And I'm like, yes, we will do it. So we try to do Sunday family meeting, Sunday mornings. And then my spouse and I are desperately overdue for couples meeting. And part of it is there tends to be a lot of budgeting in couples meeting. And, when our budget isn't feeling the best, it's like, why would we want to sit down and look that in the face? That sounds like a terrible idea.
We do couples meeting. I wouldn't call it a couple meeting. I think I do call it a family meeting. We'll get into what you should cover in these meetings. Ours is definitely not here's how I felt seen and held by you this week.
Whoa.
Which
we never do that.
I'm throwing shade at, but people say that you need to make that part of it. So we'll talk about that. But we do this very regularly. I wouldn't say we do it like Sunday at 11 and it's in the calendar, which is something else that is recommended by experts. But we do it every week. But family meeting with my kids. Now, I mean, my kids are scattered to the corners of the earth at this point. I only have one still at home. So we don't do that, but we do the couples meeting. But it's interesting. We're both like, I'm on board. Like, it's important. You have to do it.
I'm a huge believer in it. It can be hard to implement. And we recently did the worst possible version of this, which is that my husband has taken on a new role. He's very busy. I'm busy with a million things. And we recently did he walked in the door at 9:45 p.m. I brought up have you done this task that we vaguely have been talking about? He admitted he had not done the task. And then we got in a giant fight at 10:15 p.m. and went to bed extremely angry at each other. That do not recommend. And I think that one of the reasons to do the family meeting is because I am so guilty of this, to the point where I have gotten to a point with my spouse where I will say at 4 p.m, do not let me start a fight tonight, because I can feel it itching through my bloodstream that like I'm going to be, hey, remember that registration you were supposed to do? And I feel it in myself, the need to kind of throw down. And I try to recognize it in myself, but I remain flawed and I still do it, and it's not great.
I don't know. First of all, I think it's a great personality trait that you have that I do not, which is like, hey, I'm really cranky, so don't let me start a fight with you. What a low-key level of self-awareness to have that I would be like, if you would stop doing all these things that annoyed me, and believe me, my spouse shares this, that both of us are like, just don't annoy me with every single thing you'd say and do, and I won't be in a bad mood, right? That's kind of more what I bring to things. But I also think like, it's okay to be annoyed that somebody said they were going to do something that they didn't do. And it's hard to be the keeper of the things that aren't done.
Is that I can feel the difference. My mother, a therapist, would always say, don't start a conversation if you know that nothing's going to change, if it can't be fixed. And I think sometimes I start the conversation from the point of view of, hey, let's work on a solution for this problem. And sometimes I start the conversation from the point of view of, I can't wait to yell at you. It's going to feel really good.
I can't wait for you to admit you didn't do the thing I told you to do.
Yeah, like I cannot wait to spring the trap and see the, spinning eyeballs when I say, did you remember to do the car registration? And I at least have to acknowledge when I'm doing which of those things, because I think sometimes I'm not looking for a solution. I am looking for the emotional release of getting to yell at my husband.
So the reason I have a family meeting, and we'll start with like the one-on-one spouse family issues meeting, is that it puts boundaries around these things, right? And then there's a double opt-in to this is a time we're going to sit and talk about this. And the other time this comes in handy, I'm trying to have it with my kid who is right now starting the applying to college process of the double opt-in. Is it okay if we talk about where we want to go visit next for a few minutes? And you don't just bring it up. You have to have a time to bring it up. I would like to talk tonight about a few things. You don't spring it on the person. That similarly, a family meeting, when you have it, when you know it's happening, when you know Sunday morning is when you're going to talk about, have we figured out what the kids are doing this summer yet or not, means that that's where it lives and it can wait and it doesn't have to bleed into the dinner table every single night.
Yeah, and I would even take it a step further back, which we talk about a lot and I think has really helped me. Acknowledging the issue is a part we skip often, and I think it just acknowledges that we are both each other's friends, lovers, partners, but we're also running a complicated operation together. So it's like, okay, we're going to kind of put on our operations hat, our general's hat, and say, right now is about planning what comes next, because then you're right. It doesn't then become, now we're trying to be friends, but I'm slipping in the thing you didn't do correctly in the business part of our relationship. And I think just acknowledging that one part of what we do together as a couple is planning operations is really important. And even with your kids, that I love you, I support you, I feed you, but we also operate as members of a household together who all have different tasks that need to be performed for the household to run correctly. And that
Yeah.
the family meeting is just a very nice, clean way to acknowledge that piece of it so that we're not just always trying to do everything and be everyone to everyone.
These boundaries, I'm going to quote Stephanie Maines, who's a social worker, without boundaries around these tense discussions, because they become tense. We have to figure out where the kids are going to go to camp and OPS, where is that money going to come from? Tense discussion. Who's going to pay the taxes this year? Tense discussion. And without boundaries around those, Stephanie Maines says they can take over and define the relationship. And it can
Right.
become like, just when I want to watch Fargo at night is when you're going to bring up something annoying, like what does my mom want for her birthday? Because that's what you do
Right.
every night, instead of we save this for the family meeting. And then I
Yes.
also think the meeting helps with the pattern of one person's in charge of all this stuff. One person is the noticer, the planner, and gives out jobs to the other person who does the jobs and reports back. That sort of system, which I'm trying to sort of redefine in my own household, the meeting helps with that also.
Yeah, for sure. Because I remember early on when we first had kids and my husband was extremely busy with his work and I was not working as much and home with the kids. And then I would ask him to do stuff and stuff would slip through the cracks. One of the kind of recurring fights we were having at that time was, if you did your job like this, you would be fired. Like, you would not forget to do the tax filing for your job because you would lose your job. Therefore, it says to me, my work is more important than you. And that might not be what you're trying to convey or what you feel, but I don't care, because my experience of it is you take your job seriously enough to do what needs to be done, but you don't take me seriously enough to do what needs to be done. And I think the solution to that is bringing the work structure. You and I work together, and often we have a once a week meeting where you have a list of things and I have a list of things and we talk through them and who's doing what, because we are trying to run a business and there are employees who have to be paid. We put that seriousness into it because the situation demands it. And I think that your marriage and your family deserve that same seriousness, but it involves the step where you recognize that life is not The Bachelor and sitting on a hot tub on top of a mountain while someone pours you champagne and you feed each other chocolate-covered strawberries. It is a business relationship fundamentally as well.
This is obvious, but it's just occurring to me. The more efficiently you run the business part of your relationship, the more of the sitting on the hot tub and top of the mountain you get to have, right? If we have to bring up who's going to do the taxes 3 and 4 times, that's not particularly efficient and makes 2 people frustrated. And it's taking away from the time that you could be watching your favorite show. So giving this the same structure. And you're right, it is frustrating when you're the person that's like, we still need to decide these things. But underpinning that is a whole like, well, you'll make sure it happens so I can forget this conversation again until we bring it up again. But you wouldn't do that at work. Applying the same seriousness that you do and the same structure you do to the work stuff also makes it smaller. It makes it easier to handle. It makes it more controllable. You're touching things once.
And life comes at you fast. A lot is going on. There's a reason why this happens. And so it's that taking the noticing time and kind of putting that time on the calendar where you're able to say, we've talked to different guests about, okay, what are your family values? That's something that, is worth exploring. But that your family values quickly get misaligned with your family actions. And so if our value is family is the most important thing, but you're doing tennis 4 nights a week and this one's in the play and we never see each other. And when we do see each other, we're just yelling at each other, pick that up. You need to get this done. Hurry, hurry. That we're out of alignment. But that happens. That's going to constantly happen because that's the nature of being alive and life is busy and things fill in the cracks. And so it's an opportunity to reset once a week or once a month or how often you do it. Are we, having defined that these things are important to us, doing those things? And even personally, if I say taking care of myself and being active is important, but I haven't been outside in a week and I'm just sitting on the couch eating Cheetos and panicking about things. If I check in with myself once a week, I can check that behavior. But if I just go with the flow, it can be easy to say like, oops, it's been a month of doing that. And I didn't see it at the time, but I'm very off course now.
I feel like looking at this episode and the sort of structures people have put around this, which we can get into, I'm realizing that I've been doing this halfway, which is I treat my meeting with my spouse the same way that I treat my meetings with you. I don't text you every time I think of something or Slack you or whatever, or email you. I mean, sometimes I do if it's important, or call you. I have 100 ways I can reach you. What I tend to do instead is keep a running list, not in my head, but in my to-do list. That's a bullet that's just Margaret next. And in there, I put everything I got to bip through with you the next time we have a thing like that. And I do the same thing with my husband. And it works very well in terms of getting it out of my head and onto paper. So again, I'm not thinking about it until we sit down at this meeting. But I come to the meetings with my spouse with this list, and he does not. The meeting tends to be, I give him his coffee on a Sunday morning and say, is it okay if we talk about some stuff we need to talk about now? And he's like, okay. And then I get out my list and we tick through my list. And I'm realizing that that is sort of a half measure. I'm still keeping the list. And
because you want him to show up with a list too.
Yeah, not that he's doing anything wrong, but it's that's right. That it's like, we have a weekly meeting to make things more equitable. A meeting at which I'm like, here are the 10 things we need to talk about. Can you do this? Can you do this? You said you do this. Like it's when I check back, you said you were going to sign that thing. Did you sign that thing? Oh shoot, I didn't. Let me do it right now. Right. It's that. I tick through my list of things. And the other person just kind of shows up. And that isn't really going to help the idea that one person doesn't noticing in the tracking and the other person gets a little bit annoyed that they keep getting hounded about the same stuff, right? We're still doing that, just with a little more structure. It really needs to be very open-ended.
I think what you're saying is very true, that if the family meeting just becomes, I am the quarterback giving play readings to everybody, and then next week you're going to report to me, it sets you up as the boss of the family or any situation, and that isn't always ideal, and that is a small but a big fix that you can make in this situation. And especially as my kids have gotten older, I try more and more to make the family meeting, let's everybody bring something in or reflect on what's going on, because I think for the kids feeling like, okay, the general is going to give us a bunch of orders that we're going to have done or not done, and we're going to be in trouble or not in trouble. And I do think the family meeting definitely slid into me haranguing everybody for what wasn't being done correctly in the house. And it's a small adjustment to say the meeting is what's going well for you, what's not going well for you. What's something that I've noticed? I've noticed that the front room is really messy because we're all just coming in and putting our clothes on the floor. Now, I have the huge advantage that I am the worst criminal in my home. And so I don't really have the opportunity to be like, here's what you're all doing wrong. But I do think it's important to have those meetings, not just be the sheriff is coming to town to take names and give orders and everyone dreads it. And then the sheriff is mad at the end of it.
Right. There's just this fallback, I think, like, oh, and if I don't remember to file that form, it's okay, because at the next meeting, I'll be reminded again. And if I didn't do it, I'll just be like, oh, yeah, no, I said I'd do that. I still have to do it. But that's not, and be slightly annoyed that you asked me again. That's really what I'm trying to change. And I've already changed, like, you don't do that all day, every day. You do that once a week, right? Once a week in this contained conversation. So that's good. But then you're right. Like, what did you bring to this? Everybody comes with their list or one thing that they want to talk about, thing that they want to address, thing that they want to highlight, which doesn't have to be a bad thing. It isn't like it's Festivus and everybody brings their list of grievances.
The airing of the grievances.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it does. Well, let me read this to you. There's a psychotherapist and clinical social worker named Marcia Naomi Berger, and she wrote a book. It's from like 20 years ago. So some grain of salt is required. But her thing is that the prescription for lasting love is an interruption-free 30-minute meeting each week with your partner that follows an agenda. And when I looked at her agenda, it was more about the health of the relationship. This is something that's not generally part of my planning meeting.
Never part of mine.
Mine is much more like, did you tighten that faucet or not? This is more that it's highly structured, right? It's at the same time every week. You sit down next to each other, not across from each other.
That seems annoying to me. I feel like I would have to turn my head in an annoying way.
You're getting itchy. Some of this stuff, right? Like, I liked it, and then she kind of lost me. That you sit next to each other, not across from each other. I'm like, okay, that's a good mindset. Same side of the net. I can do that. That you agree that you show up to this meeting in a good mood. That's just part of it. Like, you show up ready to collaborate with this person who loves you. That's the mindset. Like, I guess
that is really important. I
think that's actually, I'm like, gosh, that seems a little tweet, but I think it would be good, because otherwise it turns into, so can we talk about these 36 things I've been saving for Sunday morning? And the other person's like, okay.
Yeah,
I just wanted my coffee. You don't want to show up as
the annoying, like, head of the PTA with a clipboard demanding things that no one else cares about.
Right. And I don't really want to do that. Right. Like, if I'm going to be the noticer, the reminder, the tracker, then, like, okay, but then we're going to have a time once a week where we're going to go through this stuff, and I'm going to get it off my list and onto yours. But we have to both show up to that meeting in a good mood. Like, okay, I can live with that. Then it was suggested that the first part of the meeting be appreciation. That you start with, I'm going to lose you here, I can tell.
I don't care about this already. I'm already rolling my eyes, but go ahead.
I mean, do with this what you will. You start with a ritual of appreciation. Like, here is something you did for me this week that I really appreciated. Like, I see you and I love you, and I loved you when you brought me my tea. That has to be the first thing that's part of that. I feel like I would be filled with so much resentment, being like, oh, now I have to say something nice before I get to the permission slip. Jesus. Like, I wouldn't really want to do it, but I see your point. Let's put it that way.
I'm definitely goofing on that in my mind, but I do think that the meeting is about what you need. And that is, I don't really believe in, like, love languages, but I do think that that's not a huge issue for me. I don't really need a ton of, you were seen this week when you blah, blah, blah. I just feel like I would be like, whatever, let's move on. But I do think that if the meeting is not going well, it's worth looking at, am I angry PTA lady with a clipboard and my spouse is chastened 4-year-old? So, like, that vibe is not good. So let's figure out what it looks like to reset that vibe.
Right.
Worthwhile, for sure.
Right. One of the ideas she had that I thought was kind of good is that another part of these meetings, which are structured, is you plan for fun. Again, this is a couples meeting. This is a like health of our marriage meeting, not a permission slip meeting. I don't really know when you're supposed to do the permission slips. I guess you do those all the rest of the time. And then as long as you have this meeting once a week, we're saying do this hard part once a week. And then the rest of it can be all fun. And she's saying like, make time for love and fun. And then the rest of the time you won't be annoyed at each other. But that a part of this couples meeting, she suggests should be planning fun, putting fun on the calendar for the two of you. It could be a vacation in 3 months, or it could be, let's have dinner with the Bensons on Friday night. But that you're planning fun, that's like ritualistically part of the calendar. And I thought, all right, that's something I could probably make part of my meeting too, because we need to get better at like making plans ahead of time.
I do think it's fairly individual. I think that my spouse and I are pretty good at fun and not very good at paying our bills. So for me, I don't feel a huge need to put fun on the calendar because I feel like both of us will say, hey, let's do happy hour Friday night. Also, I will say when your kids are a little bit older, my kids now don't need a babysitter. And let me tell you, if you are before that phase, your life gets so much better because we now can come home on a Friday night and say, hey, let's go to that restaurant we like and grab a martini and talk through our week. And we often, my husband and I just went on our first vacation by ourselves in 5 years. Where, no kids,
ever.
just
Okay,
the
5
two
years.
of us.
All right.
And jokingly, I sat down when we sat down at the first bar. We went to Aruba and sat down at a bar and had like tropical drinks. And I was like, so what have you been up to for the last half decade? And it can feel like that. And so I think that this is identifying where your need is. And I think that our need tends to be more in, you've been ignoring that email for 3 months that I asked you to do, and it's really important. And I got this. And it's more the kind of meetings I feel like you and I do where we're literally opening mail and being like, do you know what this is about? This letter from this agency that we're supposed to comply with this thing. And that tends to be a little bit more the kind of meeting that my husband and I need. But I can really see that being individual, that if we were working on a certain problem, and sometimes we do this with the kids where during our meeting we'll say, I notice that one of the kids who tends to be a little bit of a love measurer is really stuck in that mode. So let's spend the week really trying to like feed that kid's needs this week. Or this kid seems really stressed and busy, or I'm finding myself yelling too much at the kids. What do we want to fix? Those kind of things can be useful. But for me personally, I can't imagine sitting next to each other and being like, one thing I really appreciate about you is X.
I think that the hard part is that you do need your partner to be both of those things, right? Like you and I can tick through a to-do list and then say, have a good weekend. And I don't need you to emotionally affirm me and let me know that in your eyes, I'm just the same woman I've always been, whatever. Like, I don't need that from you. I need business. Back off. But with your partner, you need both. You do have to talk about the plumber and your relationship. And it gets annoying when they mix, right? When you're talking about the plumber on date night or when you don't have a date night because you're always talking about the plumber. Like, it's occurring to me, it's putting all of this on this one relationship. It is a lot to ask of the one relationship. And so if it's a pie, right? Like, how much time do you spend on this? It's always going to be unbalanced.
I think that's true. And I also think just having the meeting opens that up a little bit more. So we're talking about our marriage, you and mine, Amy, and our spousal marriages. But yes, we generally meet and do like, here's our to-do list and here's this weird letter and what do we do about it and who's doing what and who's doing what. We have occasionally in the history of our partnership. And I think the stress that we're under is causing us to like bite at each other in ways that are not helpful to the situation. So can we do a reset around that? And so I do think that you can have both of those things in these conversations. Generally, I think both in our partnership and in my marriage, we generally respect each other, treat each other nicely, and so it's rarer that we're having a conversation about, hey, what's going on with us interpersonally that's getting in the way? And it's more, let's tick through this list. But I think you can also take the temperature on that if that's useful during the meetings. Like, hey, can we have a little bit of a reset on, I feel like we're getting on opposite sides of the net and we're fighting each other. how do we get back to just fighting this problem? Because both of us, I know, fundamentally want that.
It's structure. It occurs to me, okay, so I'm on the board of a organization. I'm not going to say more about it because I'm not supposed to. But anyway, in this board, when you have a board meeting, they have at the end, if you want, what's called executive session. And during an executive session of a board meeting, that means anybody who works for the place. Because, of course, if you're on the board of an organization, the president of the organization is there, the head of fundraising, the head of operations, they're all in the room telling you about how the business is going. And then at the end of the board meeting, if you need to, you have an executive session where you send everybody who actually worked for the place out of the room and the board decides, are you rehiring the head of operations or whatever? That's how they go. I used to be on a board that would have executive sessions if you needed one. And then everybody who worked for the organization slinks out of the room like, well, what are they going to talk about? Right? They're
Right.
sending us out of the room to talk about something. Now I'm on a board where every meeting always ends with an executive session. And most of the time, the executive session is like, does anybody have anything? No? Okay, have a good weekend. But we always have it because there's always that moment presented. Who has something that needs to be said in this sensitive, protected way? And do I want to have an executive session in my in my weekly partner meeting? Not really, but if it's always there, if it feels safe to bring it up, if there's structure around it, then that makes it a little bit easier to do it, right? If that's just part of the meeting, and now it's the how are things going part of the meeting. It's like,
yeah, and I think
part four.
that the answer can be fine.
Right.
But I like the idea of always having that part of the conversation where there is a piece of it, which is how are we both feeling? I am feeling really stressed. I know that I've been short with you and the kids. It's because of these factors, and it's something I'm working on. I think it's good to do a little bit of acknowledgement of that stuff. And I think it is kind of natural to the overall conversation that you actually cannot be like, nope, now we're in business mode and now we're just going to go through the checklist, that these are combining, and that you might say, I am really stressed. I have a lot going on at work. I have a lot going on. You know that my blah, blah, blah is sick, whatever I have going on. And therefore, I am much more stressed about getting the camp forms done this week. I understand that it might not be that important and it might not be part of it, but, and I'm thinking out loud as we're having the conversation, but I think it's helpful to say, I need to focus on getting my stress level down. And for me, that would mean getting all of these little ticky-tack things off of my list. That would help me. I know right now I have, if you took down the border behind me, my room is, I never unpacked from our trip, which was a week and a half ago. I haven't done laundry. I've been too busy. And I know it's stressing me out, but I haven't been able to quite tackle it because I kind of need a full afternoon. That might be something where I say, one of the things is I want to get this house back to one this week because I feel it is stressing me out. It's part of the reason why I want it to be done.
Mm-hmm. I'm reading now that Marsha Naomi Berger, the woman who talks about having these marriage meetings, she does have part 4 of the meeting is problems and challenges. And that's a moment where you can bring up conflicts and issues in the relationship and life in general. So I like that you can frame it as like, I'm challenged this week because I actually don't have enough time to clean the house and the house is a disaster. So I'm feeling a little stressed about that. That's a challenge that I'm facing, that I'm bringing to you, not why don't you help more?
Another thing that I think can come out of meetings is solutions, choose once kind of solutions. You talk about it. It's a lazy genius concept. Choose once means I always get a baby, a blanket with their name on it, whatever. I don't make this decision again and again. And this is something that has come out of our family meetings in a really helpful way. Everybody knows their chores. There's a kid who's in charge of keeping the wood. We have a fireplace, wood stacked and wood brought in. We have a kid who's in charge of one cat's litter box, another kid who's in charge of the other. One kid feeds the cats. And we kind of don't do who's weak and I'm going to ask you, but I just did it. And this person, we try to make a lot of choose once decisions. And one of the other things we do is realms. And we do this, you and I at work, that you have a kind of realm that you know that everything under that umbrella is going to default to you. And then everything under another umbrella defaults to me, 2 categories of things. And it just makes it easier. And my husband and I have spent a lot of time kind of defining those realms. And I just got a thing that said forms are kind of my husband's realm. We don't have a printer at home right now that works because see chaos, but he has a printer at work. So if it's a form, I just got a thing. Your son's physical is going to expire during the sports season. Therefore, you need to fill out this form. Forward. I know that goes right to my husband's inbox, and that's a tag you're it. Like you are now in charge of that form. And two things. One is zones of operation. I make dinner every night. I'm in charge of dinner. But I will tell my husband, I'm out Thursday night. That means you're going to be in charge of dinner Thursdays. But the default is I'm in charge of dinner. The default is he's in charge of breakfast. And setting up some of those zones, and then knowing that we established this a long time ago, tag your it means we don't talk about this again. This isn't up to me to then have on my checklist next week and make sure you've done it. You put it on your checklist and you can confirm with me that it's done, but I am not the PTA clipboard holder. If it goes in your column, it's not my job to follow up and make sure it was done. It's a tag your it item and you got to do it.
We're having a little bit of a harder time with that because my spouse has more time and ability to contribute to this stuff than he used to. I mean, we used to be like our realms were 90% me, 10% him. We both bought into it and it worked for a time and now he wants to be more involved. But like, okay, so then you're in charge of summer vacation, where we're going. But when you've never done that before, you think deciding where we're going to go for summer vacation is actually your Quebec is really nice in the summer. Like, oh, okay. Okay, so Quebec.
Off
so
you
it's
go.
Quebec, right. So go plan it, right? Go plan it.
Right.
And I think that what we're sort of readdressing is musing aloud that Quebec might be nice is not you are in charge of summer vacation, right? That's step 1 of step 48. But readdressing that has been more challenging.
And I think the meeting can give you an opportunity to say, we just took a trip and my husband planned it after it being requested that he plan it, basically. And I am very specific about food. I like to find the good food and stuff. So I was like, I'll find the reservations or whatever. But who's doing it and how much say do I want in it? So I would not be comfortable saying to my husband, you make all the summer plans, because then I would show up at the summer plans and say, these are terrible summer plans. And now I am mad at you. And so I think that you can get granular about, you are in charge of this. I have veto power and I want 4 check-ins about the plan. Like you can get very specific about how you want to approach it, but you have to be very honest with yourself about how attached you are to outcomes in those situations. So
I'm trying to hand over the outcomes and it's not, we're trying to rewrite how we do things. Like I really don't care. It's like, I want you to experience how hard it is to plan a summer vacation for everybody and the 45 things that are involved, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, like with travel, my husband books all of the travel. Like he actually goes, I haven't booked an airline ticket in 10 years, probably. I'll say, this is where we're going. I usually kind of make the plans and have you talk to your parents and your sisters, and this is where we're coming. Do they know we're arriving? But he generally does it. But then I, after some trial and error, realized that I don't want to take a 6 a.m. flight from Newark on a Saturday morning. And so from where I live, it's like an hour and
$40
a half.
a ticket or something.
To save, right, $100. Like I don't, that's not a right choice for me. And so you book the tickets, but before you press book, you come back to me and I will give it a thumbs up or thumbs down, because it's not fair to ask him to do it. And then when I see the ticket the night before and start screaming, why the heck are we leaving at 4:45 a.m. from Newark when I have all these Christmas presents to lug and all this other stuff? And a lot of it is trial and error and figuring out. He does not want to, quote unquote, do it wrong. And there are, to be fair, many ways for him to do it wrong, many of which he has experimented with already.
Well, yeah, wrong is booking the wrong day, right? Or wrong is missing the flight.
6 a.m. from Newark for me. It really is. That's wrong. I don't want that.
It's hard to argue it's correct.
No. And we have very different ideas about that. And so I think you do have to get granular about, okay, and then weekly, and I will say we're not doing weekly meetings right now because we both have a lot going on and because I think we don't want to face some of the realities of what will come up in the weekly meeting. But I think that saying, okay, why didn't this move forward? What is it? Well, it's because I'm afraid to book it because I don't think you're going to like what I end up doing. Okay, I absolutely release that. I agree that if you do it, I have no say in it. Or, you know what, you're right. I am very picky about what kind of place we stay. I don't want to stay in a sketchy motel. I don't.
I think it's just breaking it down more. It's like, okay, planning a summer vacation. Here are the things that are involved, right? Like, and it is, you're parking at the airport. Where are you going to go for dinner every single night, right? I think maybe sometimes when you haven't done that before, you don't realize the subheadings that are involved.
Right. And I do actually not want to hand over planning fundamentally. And that was something I had to realize. Like, oh, it's such a dream for you to plan it. But then when we get there and it's not right, I'm going to be really, really annoyed. Like, why would you book this crazy hotel in a beach town that is 7 miles from the beach? I don't, now we're fighting and you tried. And so for us, it has been an issue of tag your it and check back with me on these 4 different steps.
Or you bring what you need. I mean, I don't always like it when the meeting devolves into, oh no, I didn't fill out that form, so let me do it right now. I'm like, no, we're gonna go through the rest of the list and then you go do whatever you want with the rest of your day, including filling out the form. But let's not stop and do each thing. But sometimes the right thing to do is, okay, we do have to book the tickets to your cousin's wedding. So let's just sit right now. One thing that definitely works well for us is when we sit down to talk through stuff, one brings to that the calendar, the phone, the email, the access to the form that they're supposed to fill. Like you have everything you need to make the decisions while you're sitting there. And then sometimes it is easier to just book the plane tickets while you're both sitting there. So sometimes we'll do that too.
And I think for the family meeting, especially coming in a good mood? Like, yes, agreeing to come in a good mood. But really for us, I find it's agreeing to come equally to the table. And we don't really come equally with our kids. We have a lot more say than our kids do, but empowering everybody to kind of, this sounds very tweet, but like really you can bring in, I wanted to go out with my friends and you yelled at me because I didn't have my card with me and you had to do this. Like really being open. And this is more with older kids. You're not doing this with a 3-year-old, but even with an 8-year-old, what do you want the vacation to look like? Because I want to go, we're going to this beach place and I want to see the 6 different sites and get on a bus at 7:00 every morning and go really make sure that we see everything. And your kid might say, what's most important to me is having time to just lay down and do nothing because I'm tired from school, and allowing the meeting to at least acknowledge other people's point of view, not my strength.
There's one more tip I wanted to bring in. Becky Vieira, she's Witty Otter on Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
She is a big proponent of these meetings, and she uses Slack with her husband, which Slack is like software. We use Slack to communicate with each other, with our podcast producer, with our whole company. We use Slack. You brought me into Slack. I had never used Slack before. You would use it at your previous job. My husband uses it at work. She was stuck in this pattern where her spouse would say that he was going to do something and they didn't do it, and then said, you didn't tell me to do that, like that kind of thing. And
I got receipts
and got in this conversation of like, you wouldn't be able to do this at work. And then she had the realization, well, he uses Slack. Well, at work, I just check the Slack. It's like, okay, let's just use Slack. So now they use Slack as their communication. And what's good about Slack, if you don't know what it is, I mean, it's just a way where you can text and email, but everything that's just between the two of you is in there. And it's not cat memes from Instagram. It's just, here's the form for soccer or the camp for this summer. And then you can search Slack and it's in there. And so it has really changed our work ability to get it out of email. And if I want to see who said what to this podcast 3 weeks ago, it's in there.
Right.
And so she uses it with her spouse and found like it didn't, she was no longer hearing from him that I didn't remind him to check something, or that he couldn't find something that I had already sent him, because in Slack you can find it. So I'm Slack curious coming out of this, is something I might actually want to try.
We briefly were using a Google Doc as a to-do list. That fell off. I mean,
It's so
I think
hard to like nest in
all
Google
of these
Doc. Yeah.
systems will always be like back to one things where you have to say, hey, things are getting lost. Things are organized. Let's go back to the Slack. Let's go back to the Google Doc to-do list. Let's go back to the Sunday mornings at 9 meeting. And it's never going to be like, and this solves it forever. But I do think systems help all of these things. And then you kind of come in with, hey, we're on the same team. We want these things to work better. Let's put a system in place. And then, yes, in 8 months, are we going to have abandoned the system and be back to yelling at each other at 10 o'clock at night and going to bed angry? Yes, we will.
Probably.
But
Yeah.
we at least we know why it happens and we have somewhere we can go back to.
Solved it.
That's
Perfect
family meetings, friends.
I'm going to try Slack. I'll let you know how it goes. I love a system.
We would like you to meet our podcast in the ratings and review area of the podcast
That's
app.
right. Put this on your list for your
Put
family
this
meeting.
on your to-do
You
list.
can
And
both
let's
do
be
it.
honest, put it on your husband's to-do list as well. He can review us as well.
Everybody in your family can do this.
Everybody in the family at the family meeting should pull out their phones and give our podcast a nice review. Really helps people find the podcast. Really helps us keep going with the show. And with that, friends, thanks so much for listening.
We'll talk to you next week.
Bye.